This video is being recorded at 12:48 p.m. Pacific Time on Sunday, August 14th. So the Sydney session is about to start. It's going to be Monday over there right now. So this is just going to be a quick preview of the Forex markets for this upcoming week, and I'll mention any Forex pairs that have good setups, which I might be looking to take a trade in. Okay, so out of the pairs I watch, I already tagged a few that have good looking setups. So let me start with Euro USD on the weekly chart first. So as you can see here from the price action, the euro against the US dollar has been down for the last several months, ever since January or February this year. It has been getting resisted by this trend line pretty nicely, and the most recent touch on that one was this last week's candle that just closed. So it could go down this week, and in a big way. So two confirmations to look for that is if it keeps getting resisted by the trend line and breaks this smaller counter trend line downwards. So this week could actually be a fairly big bodied candle. It could go down all the way another maybe 230 pips, 220 pips or so until the previous bottom. And it may even go through in 1 week. So that could be a good setup. According to the Ichimoku lines, the long-term lines are trending down. The Kijun Sen is pointing downwards, and the Tenkan Sen is also pointing downwards. So in the event that one of these lines is pointing down, there's usually a higher chance the price will get resisted and go back down. So as you can see last week, the Tenkan Sen was angled downwards, and then we touched and then closed below the Tenkan Sen. So yeah, that's one thing to look for. And on the daily chart, you can see this trend. It was resisted for 2 days in a row on August 10, August 11, and then on Friday, we had a bearish engulfing candle that closed below the previous day's low. So yeah, the trend line support will be the key breakout on the daily level. It may take Monday or Tuesday for that to happen on this pair, but it is a good setup for this week. Yeah, generally speaking, most of the euro pairs are trending down. Pound is also weak, so those are the two themes that I'm going to be looking to trade this week: weak euro and weak pound. And the stronger pairs against them are the Australian dollar, the Swiss franc, and maybe the US dollar in some cases. Yeah. US dollar has been a little bit weak in the last couple weeks, but in the long term it's still strong, especially against the European currencies. Okay, let me show Euro AUD. So yeah, this is another pair that looks like it's about to break out. Ever since the sell-off after the February Ukraine outbreak invasion, it has still been weak. It touched the previous support back on the end of June and has been getting sold off ever since on the weekly chart. So the last week was kind of important to notice. We had a full-bodied candle right here that engulfed the previous 2 weekly candles, and the important thing to note is that it closed into what was previously the wick support. So even though it broke the lows from the previous 2 weeks, it still has not broken the very low set back on April 4th. But it's still looking bearish because previously the buyers were willing to buy in this range and keep it from closing within this area. But after last week, that is no longer the case. So the likelihood of this pair going down even further is pretty high. And there's no really visible support until 1.409 or even lower at 1.363. So there's several hundred more pips to trade if it does break out. So this will be another one to watch. And you can see the same confirmation by the daily chart here. It is closing into the previous lows set back on April 5th and 6th. So it may retrace briefly, but overall the trend is going downwards. So those are the best looking euro pairs that I see. Let me go over Euro CAD and Euro Swiss franc. So Euro CAD is also going down, but it still looks like it's being supported. There's no clear breakout yet. It could happen still this week. There's some Canadian news that's going to happen on August 16th around the published inflation rates. So in case it, there could be some reaction around that in anticipation if the Canadian Central Bank is going to hike or not. So that could be a catalyst for it to break down even further. Euro Swiss franc. So the Swiss franc has probably been one of the top two strongest currencies in the last few weeks, even outpacing the dollar most recently. So Euro Swiss franc is another strong trending pair going downwards. As you can see, we had a bit of a fight in the last 2 weeks around this area. So last week's candle, the bulls were able to buy it back and have a full-bodied candle to almost match the magnitude of the bearish candle before it. But this last week's candle that formed has seen the sellers again push the price back down. It's even a longer full-body candle that engulfed the previous bullish one, and it closed below it. So it should keep still going down. And as you can see on the daily chart, what this illustrates is it broke the previous support at 0.9697, and that also happened to be one of the dojis here that formed on Thursday. So the way you can read this market psychology is that the sellers are continuing to push it down, and even after a retracement, they were still interested in selling it down to the support. And then as you can see, when it was at the support on Thursday, there was some hesitation by the market if it wanted to rebound or go through. And then after one day, the sellers came in and thought it was still worth selling all the way through the support. And that's how we had this break using this full-bodied bearish candle right here. Yeah, whenever you see full-bodied candles, that shows a strong move by the market from one side of the market. There was not, a lot of people willing to buy to defend this area, so that's how the candle closed in a full-bodied way. So always look out for those and compare those with significant levels, either set by support or dojis from before. I think that will help you get an idea of what the participants are thinking in the market. So yeah, Euro Swiss franc is another good pair to trade. Just keep in mind that there is volatility on the lower time frames. If you try to trade the Swiss franc pairs, it could look like it's going to break out and then retrace past your stop loss and then turn around and keep going in the direction you thought it was going to go. Okay, let me look at some of the pound pairs. So pound moves quite similarly to the euro, except it's usually a little bit stronger. But even against the stronger currencies, it can still have a breakout move. So let's look at pound USD. We've been seeing a similar setup to the euro. It's also getting resisted by a nice trend line going downwards. So these last few weeks are important. You can see by the wicks here, it shows that not only once but twice the market has been respecting this trend line and still going downwards. If you remember from Euro USD, it's not as weak as that one because Euro USD closed below the Tenkan Sen line, whereas Pound USD is basically on the Tenkan Sen, if not a little bit above it. So not as bearish as the Euro, but if the dollar makes a move, both of these pairs are going to end up going down anyway. So if it does break down, there's about another 300 pips until the previous low. So you can see on the daily chart here, if it breaks out of the 1.206 level, it's going to end up forming a double top. So this is the price of the neckline right here. So if on Monday it goes down, it could set up to go even lower. So you'll still have 300 pips to trade, even if it doesn't break out. And even then, there's a good chance of it breaking out for more pips. So that's another one I'll keep checking. Next is Pound AUD. So AUD has been strong recently as well. It was actually only starting this trend on Thursday and Friday, but as we can see here, against the pound, AUD has broken out of the support here. So this has caused the Kijun Sen lines and the cloud lines to angle downwards as it made a new low. So yeah, it's broken out of this triangle range here. Previously we had lower highs and higher lows. What that means in terms of market psychology is that the volatility is going down on both the sell and buy sides. The buyers are no longer willing to wait until the previous low to buy, which keeps the price going up on this support trend line here. And the sellers are getting also more impatient and no longer waiting for the market to come back to the previous high to sell. So that forms this trend line resistance here. So usually when you see the setup, the market will bounce along in this range. You can interpret it as a flat trading range, just with some minor changes in the trend lines. But last week it has broken all the way down past the trendline support and past all of the wick supports here, and it closed solidly under. So if you zoom out, you can see there is not a lot of support, not a lot of clear support until the next level at 1.613. So yeah, that's maybe almost 900 pips of trading room. Obviously it's not for sure going to go down in a straight line, but the chances are higher that the market will go towards this level instead of staying in a range as it has been. So looking at the daily chart, we do see that Thursday was the breakout on this pair, and then Friday was a continuation. So previously, as you can see, it bounced on this trend line, went back up, got sold down. So whenever I see it approaching a significant price level, I'm always watching for a reaction. If it continues its inertia and bounces to stay in a range, or if it breaks through. So if it was going to bounce, it had August 9th and August 10th to go back up. And then August 10th, as you can see here, it went down rather than bouncing. So from this, you could have potentially looked for a sell-off again, which did happen on Thursday. I was not trading this pair at the end of last week, but I was watching it. So you can see we had continuation into the close of the week. And this says something about the market where the traders did not actually close their positions and buy back what they sold. So had that happened, you might have seen, maybe a doji or even a bull candle going back to retest the previous support. But it's unusual that, the continuation happened into Friday, and even on the 5-minute chart, it continued to form higher or lower lows on Friday. So yeah, there could be a big move happening in the AUD pairs, so I'll be watching pound AUD as well. Let's see, so pound CAD is similar, but not as bearish as pound AUD just yet. Although it is trending downwards and has the same long-term downtrend as we've seen. So pound Swiss franc is also similar to euro Swiss franc. We did have a breakdown this last week. The market after the June sell-off, it was retesting this support. I tried to, I think, sell it in this last week, but I had to exit with a minor loss on the 9th. And you can see, right, it didn't break through all the way cleanly. There was still some resistance. On August 10th was a doji by the sellers to try and attempt to recuperate, but that did not happen. And then on August 11th, which was Thursday, the sellers continued to push the price down. And then Friday was basically total capitulation, where there does not seem to be any more buying to push the price back up right now. So yeah, another example of strong selling into the close on Friday. Not as strong as the AUD pair, but there you can see when New York opened, some of the London traders did decide to close their positions, but there's still enough traders in the New York session to enter positions and sell it about halfway down to the breakout. So yeah, there is not much support at all until the previous low made back in March 2020. So as for this pair, that would be about 300 pips, 170 to 300 pips if you're measuring by the previous wick lows back in 2020. So yeah, pound Swiss franc is also very bearish at the moment. So as a comparison, I'll show you some of the correlations between the weak and the strong pairs. So we're talking about how the euro and pound are both weak, but let's take a look at how weak exactly they are compared to each other. So yeah, the euro pound has been mostly range bound on the weekly chart. We found maybe a double bottom low back in April, and euro has been stronger up until June, but now it's retracing, and the pound is gaining back strength against it. So yeah, it's still within the cloud in the Ichimoku indicator, but it has been getting resisted. And if you follow the trend line on this pair, it could continue to go downwards. So yeah, that would mean euro is could get weaker and pound could get stronger in this pair. So if you're ever deciding which two currencies to trade against the stronger or weaker currency, you can always look at the correlation between those two to see how it might move in the next setup as well. And we were saying that AUD, USD, and Swiss franc are all strong recently. So let's look at a few of the correlations between those two, or those three currencies. So dollar Swiss franc, as you can see what I've been talking about, Swiss franc is stronger than the dollar in the last several weeks. In this last week, we had a huge, almost 200 pip sell-off. Yeah, like 230 pip sell-off this last week with the bearish engulfing candle. But it is close to support now, so the parity between dollar and Swiss franc might not change a bit. In fact, dollar could strengthen relatively against the Swiss franc this week to, continue its bouncing movement in this channel range here. It's also at the previous highs from September, November, January, in March earlier this year. So it could bounce back up, back to the weekly Kijun-sen. So yeah, if you're ever wondering, as I said, always look at the strength between two currencies to see how it might move in the future. Just because Swiss franc was weak in the last several, strong in the last several weeks, does not mean this pair will keep going down. In fact, it's set up to bounce kind of nicely here. Okay, let's look at AUD Swiss franc as a comparison. So from the weekly chart, AUD has actually been holding up stronger against the Swiss franc than the dollar. Last week was actually a bullish candle, and it about engulfed the doji before it. So if AUD Swiss franc continues to gain and breaks out past the 0.67 level, it could keep going up until 0.6839, which is the previous low, or even higher to this descending trend line right here. As you can see, this is also a triangle trading area that we saw previously. This is just on the weekly chart. So yeah, AUD could be strong against the Swiss franc in the next several weeks. But yeah, let's look at AUD USD to see how that one's been doing. So yeah, in the long term, US dollar is stronger than AUD, but ever since the market found a bottom on July 11th, we have seen AUD making a rebound. So it's forming higher lows and higher highs, and it's about to touch the previous Kijun-sen or even the previous high at 0.7274. So yeah, even against the US dollar, AUD could still have some room to run before, either retracing or selling off again. It is also, I think, at this, it broke past this descending trend line. So if it was going to follow this channel movement here, it would have, it got sold off last week, and if it was going to continue, then this last week should have been bearish as well. But it's not, it's broken through. So there's more of a chance it can stay in a range here or bounce and then continue upwards. So yeah, these are the dynamics between the two weakest currencies right now, euro and pound, and maybe three of the strongest currencies, AUD, USD, and Swiss franc. The JPY has been kind of flat, but I tagged AUD JPY just because the Australian dollar is strong recently. So let me take a look at this one as well. So for this one, we do have an ascending triangle. If you draw a support right here, and then if we say the previous highs were about at the same level, you can see that it's kind of bumping against this higher level, and it could break out again, especially after the candle last week. We can see it was a full-bodied bull candle, closed above the previous doji, and it's closing into the wicks, as I mentioned. So yeah, that's another powerful signal you can read from the price action. If the candle closes into what was previously wick territory, it could mean there's a good chance of a continuation in that direction. So yeah, against the JPY, AUD has been strong, even looking like it's set up for a breakout. So yeah, and even if you compare against the benchmark dollar JPY, it's still stronger. AUD is still stronger against JPY than the dollar is. So yeah, so there's some good setups for this next week. Hopefully the markets can start trending soon. They've been a bit indecisive for the last several weeks or months, because there's been no clarity on the interest rate decisions. But yeah, for myself, I am going to reattempt the FTMO challenge. I ended the last attempt without breaking any of the rules. I just did not meet the 10% profit targets. So I am qualified for a free reattempt. So I think I will look for an opportunity to start maybe this week. And for anyone else taking the FTMO challenge, I encourage you to read their rules carefully to know where the boundaries are. For example, if you know that you get 30 days from placing your first trade, that means you don't have to be urgently looking for a setup. As soon as you get your credentials, you still have 30 days from when you placed your first trade to be able to complete the challenge. So I could even wait another 2 weeks, 4 weeks. If I don't have a setup that I like, I just won't take a trade. And then I know that when I do take my first trade, the 30 days start counting from then. So yeah, you always want to maximize the edges in your favor. Trading for a prop firm challenge isn't always exactly like trading just by yourself if you don't have those limitations put onto you. So yeah, these are the Forex setups I see for next week. And then I'll look if there's any breakouts happening in the London session tonight.